So maybe quickly introduce yourself to everyone. Tell them who you are. Maybe for some, tell them your age. Ngoba ngathi bayapha.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, my name is Ellie, as I'm sure you've heard. I'm 23. I did my undergrad at Florida Atlantic University in the US, and I graduated in December on the 10th. And now, hopefully, if the coronavirus doesn't mess things up anymore, I'll be starting my PhD program in August at Duke University, which is in North Carolina.
All right, good. So, Shem, but so that's black for I'm very impressed.
Well, thank you. That's nice to hear.
Okay, so I think let's start with your journey in America. When did you leave, and why did you leave? Let's start there.
Right. Why did I leave? I mean, there's a whole personal story. I don't know if that's you want yourself to hear.
That one.
So the reason I left was because I did have an opportunity to study in the US, and I'd always wanted to travel, and I figured, why not? What's the worst that could happen? And my parents supported it.
Okay, so did you start already at university, or did you have to finish high school there?
So I did all of my high school in South Africa except the very last semester of matric. I finished that off at an online high school, and then from there I applied to university. But with regards to a South African wanting to apply to university, I still had to submit all of my transcripts or my grades from grade 9 up until the point of when I left in matric. And then I also had to submit what curriculum our school followed so that they could convert my grades. So even if I had finished high school in South Africa, I still would have, even though I did high school in the US, I still would have had to submit all of my stuff from my South African high school. And then I also had to do my SATs. Those I wrote in South Africa. I registered and paid for them in South Africa, and I wrote them here. Your school also needs that. And then it's really easy how your school receives the SAT scores. It's all through the online system where you register.
So just explain to everyone, what are SATs?
So SATs is it's a standardized test. If I'm being honest, it doesn't, gosh, it's unfortunate that it counts for getting into the school, but it doesn't actually really test anything other than how good are you at the SATs. So it is an unfortunate thing that you do have to do, and you do have to study and practice because, there's an essay component, there's a math component, and then there's a language component. The math component, if you guys are doing regular math, you should be fine, if I remember correctly. The language component, they're very intentionally tricky. So they'll intentionally look for big words that no one uses, like gregarious, right? They intentionally do that kind of thing. So with it, you do have to study for it, and unfortunately it doesn't actually help you in any real tangible way, but yeah.
And then obviously as a foreign student, you need to get a student visa. So how did you get a student visa to go to America?
So first you have to get accepted into a school, which means, submitting your transcript and your SAT scores. Once they accept you, you will then be contacted by their international office. You have to submit a statement that says, how much, if you need to show upfront that you can pay for a full year of school. After that, they will issue you an I-20. Once you have your I-20, that is when you will make an appointment with the embassy. You fill out your DS-160 first. And then once that's complete, go ahead and book your appointment. You have to pay for your appointment time. You take all of your documents, then they will issue you the visa inside of your passport.
Yeah, so maybe just go over the finance part. So you basically have to prove you could feed yourself, pay your fees in America without anyone having to assist you from the get-go, right?
Right. So you have to show that you can pay for one whole year of tuition, which is $20,000. you have to show that you can, if you're not going to be if you're not going to be using on-campus housing, you have to show that you at least have the money to pay for that. And then, yes, you have to show that you can pay for food, groceries, etc. The way that my parents did it was that they just, called up a few family members, put the money in the account, showed the statements, and then gave the money right back. Because all they want is just to see the statement with your name and the money attached to it. You don't literally have to have all of that money up front. They just need to see it.
Yeah, because that's obviously to make sure that you would have some form of access to money if things would pear-shaped.
Exactly.
All right, good. So now that you've been in America for quite a while, how did you finance yourself? Were your parents sending you money? Did you find a job? How did you survive?
So I had 2 scholarships. I had a DPAN scholarship that gave me $2,000 a year. I had a tuition waiver, which it's a little weird to explain, but I was allowed to pay in-state tuition for 6 credits. And I think I sent you how the numbers work out with that one. And then my parents did help me with the rest of my school fees. They also did help me with my rent, which was $500 for a shared 1-bedroom. And then I also had a job, so I could pay for my own books and, my own clothes and whatever else I wanted. I had a job, and that paid me $10 an hour for 20 hours a week, which is about $700 a month.
Cool. So now that you've studied in an American university or college, what would you say are the differences between that and your memory of how South African university works?
So I think, and this I sort of spoke to my mom a little bit because, my knowledge of South African universities is very peripheral. But in a US system, you have to do 2 years of general education, which means you need to take intro courses that are in anthropology and dance and, different fields, and the idea is to get you to be fully exposed to what's out there and create a well student. My sense is that in South Africa, that's not really the case. You get right into your degree. Whereas in the US, it's only in the last 2 years that you're really doing your high level courses that are in your specific major. What else? My sense, and this is based on my younger brother, Ulwandle, who's at UP, is that maybe the environment is a little bit more supportive in South African universities. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, because again, this is just what I'm hearing. Whereas in the US, you really, really do have to make an effort to go to your teacher, to go to office hours, to create the relationship, to reach out to people. Again, I'm sure maybe that's also true for South African institutions, but I know for me at least, if you don't take initiative, you'll pass, but you'll get a C. To do really well is where the effort takes. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It does. So then, when you think of being in America, let's say I just want to move to America and work there. Are people as obsessed in America about college degrees as they are in South Africa about having a university degree?
If you want to get a good job, yes. Now, if you decide for whatever reason you want to move here and work at, say, Publix, which is a grocery store, sure, you could do that. But if you want an actual job, if you want a job as a teacher, if you want a job as a journalist, if you want a job in a publishing house, if you want any real job that's going to give you a career, absolutely you need a degree. Preferably, you need a master's degree, an undergrad degree. Preferably, you'd have a master's degree.
And when you talk about the whole degree purpose, should I pursue studying in America so I can work in America, or can I come with my degree and just work there and tell them it's legit?
So you certainly can come. It depends. If you're doing something like an LLB law, that might be too specific to South Africa for that to exist in the US. So you just need to be mindful of um, which degrees can transfer and which can't. Like an English degree, that can easily transfer and that's legitimate. If you can find a connection, to apply for a job, you're in contact with someone who wants you there, it's then much easier to move. But it is going to be, if you have the extra money, you can definitely like come on a tourist visa and, pop into different offices and see what's up. But you will need a degree. And depending on the degree, it can be transferable. If you don't have those kinds of connections, that's when I would suggest you get your undergrad in South Africa, then come to the US and get your master's degree and make sure it's fully funded, as in tuition is paid for and they give you a stipend. And then that can serve as your connect to then a career in the US.
And then I remember you spoke a bit about internships. Just explain that process.
So an internship is really helpful for connecting you to other people if you do want to get a job. The way that I did it was during my undergrad degree, during the summer semester, which is from early May to about mid-August, where even as an international student, you're not required to take any classes. You take that time to go and do, most internships are unpaid, unfortunately, but you take that time to go and do an unpaid internship. And if you make a good impression, they will then ask if you can come back after you've graduated from your degree. And if you're someone who, if you want to in the US, and you don't want to do a master's degree and you want to get into something like journalism or entertainment journalism or whatever, that is the path that I would most strongly suggest, that you use your time to get internships, to create relationships, so that after you graduate, you can then get a job. Yes.
So just tell everyone, what did you study and what are you continuing with?
So I majored in English and I minored in philosophy. I'll still be doing my PhD in English, but now I'm interested in the post-colonial experience as it relates to art, photography, and literature. I'm interested in transcontinental Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. And I'm really interested in doing an interdisciplinary study in art history and literature to see what that relationship is like. I can go into more detail about my project, but I don't know if that would be helpful.
I don't think so, not now. Then looking back at your journey as in America and studying, what would you change, if anything?
I think I would have started doing my internships a little bit sooner, because I think it would have helped me. I'm happy with the choice that I made, but I think it would have helped me arrive at that choice sooner. And then I could have spent more summers doing directed independent studies, going to other universities to do summer programs there. So I wish I had done internships maybe in my second year. I wish I had put in a greater effort into looking for teachers that I really click with that would serve as mentors. I eventually did find one, but that was in my last year. And there's so much that I learned from him that had I found him even in my second year, I think I would have been able to sharpen myself much, much quicker. And I think I would have, and maybe this applies whether you move or not, given myself more permission to enjoy the fact that you're in university and you're meeting new friends and you're meeting new people. And people that like what you like, that are interested in what you're interested in, and really like creating an intellectual community for yourself. Or if you want to go into whatever field you want to go into, kind of getting together friends that also want to go in the same direction as you. I wish I had done that.
All right, cool. Does anyone have questions? Yes, Long, I'll ask you a question. I'll repeat it, so just say it. I don't think she'll know that though. Yeah, but um, maybe Ellie, if you can get me some brochures and
Okay.
some perspectives from your university. Then I can share it with the young men.
Okay. I
Okay.
can do that from FAU and JMU, and I'll click around for you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Tandan? All right, so he's asking, as a young Black woman, how did you adjust to American culture in general? Because I know you also stayed in the South, isn't it?
So yes, so I was in, let me explain a little bit. I was in South Florida. The stereotypical South really begins from Orlando upwards, and it is in like from Texas all the way east. And in fact, my PhD program, I'll be in the real South. So in terms of living in South Florida, I'll start with maybe what was good about it. What was good is that because there are so few Black people, when you walk into a store and you see another Black person, there's this sort of automatic like greeting that sort of happens, like, you know, I'm here, you're here, we're both good, great. And that's anywhere you go except for places that are majority Black, because, you know, that's not necessary. So it was nice to feel like I was immediately part of some kind of community. I think some of the stuff I experienced isn't any different from South Africa, right? If I'm wearing Black jeans and a plain t-shirt and I'm at a store, some old white lady will assume I'm working there. If I'm at a men's store with a male friend, someone will just assume that I'm working there because I'm Black. So I think some of the maybe racial things I experienced are really no different from South Africa. Some of the things are maybe a little bit annoying, like, oh, you sound like you're from the UK. No, I'm from South Africa. Oh my gosh, are there animals? You know, like it's things like those that are problematic, but they really are inconsequential to life. I can't speak to what it might be like for a Black male in the US, because I'm sure you guys know, unfortunately, that demographic is particularly targeted. So I couldn't speak to that experience, but I do know my friends, you know, who have Black boyfriends and brothers. They certainly are a little bit more afraid for them when they walk out the door. And what I will say on that is that if you are Black and male and you're thinking of moving to the US, the best advice I can give you is to try and live as close to a university as possible, because that's where, quote, diversity is most expected, and you'll sort of be able to move a little more freely without, you know, undue scrutiny.
All right. Okay, last question. Yes, Langa? All right, now I understand. So Ellie, I remember in your early days in America, you were struggling with their food because you found it to be quite trash. So how is American food now for you, now that you are rather American?
I don't think that's true, but I'll answer the question. I think, have I gotten used to the fast food a little more? Sure. Have I stopped going to McDonald's? Yes. So I think I've gotten a little more savvy with where I eat out, because, like, I'm telling you now, for the first 6 months, you will have a stomach ache. It doesn't matter if you're cooking. It doesn't matter if you're buying your own groceries. It doesn't matter if you're eating out. You will have a stomach ache. I don't know what it is. The food is just something going on with food. But you will get over the stomach ache. I mean, for the most part, I cook at home, and that's been nice. I can cook some of the meals from home, and I can avoid whatever it is that they put in their fast food. But yeah, I have gotten used to it. It's still not as good as South Africa, but you know, you'll get used to it.
Then let's talk about how you chose the college that you attended. Did you choose it because it's close to where you were living, or did you choose it because of what it offered?
So I have family friends in the US, and the woman that I stayed with, she worked at FAU, and because I sort of felt flustered with all of the different places to apply to, I just applied there. But it worked out really well because FAU, their out of state tuition is one of the most affordable in the US. So it worked out really well in that sense. And having gone to FAU, I mean, it was honestly, it was a great university. The Now the housing expenses were like South Florida was a little bit expensive, but great school. I was able to get a job. I was able to find colleagues that I really enjoyed working with. I found teachers that I really enjoyed, that really kind of to me. um yeah.
So were your parents sending you money to survive? Did you look for a job? How did you make your means in America?
So my parents, so I had two scholarships. I had a scholarship that gave me $2,000 a year. And then I had another scholarship that was a tuition waiver, which allowed me to pay in-state tuition for 6 credits. And the numbers are available for how all of that works. Then the rest of the tuition my parents paid for. When I lived in my one-bedroom apartment, I shared it with another person, and that was $500 a month, which my parents gave me money for. And then I had a job. It was $10 an hour for 20 hours a week. So in a month, I earned about $700, and that's what I used to buy my books. If I wanted to go out with my friends, that's how I paid for that. If I had any trips, what have you, that's what fine for.
Okay. So you in the document you sent, you spoke about how international students aren't allowed to have specific jobs. Can you just unpack that?
Right. So international students are only allowed to work on campus and only for 20 hours a week. If you go past 20 hours in the spring and the fall semesters, you'll get into a lot of trouble. Summer's a different story, but we'll stick to spring and fall. Those are your two main semesters. Um, if you want to say if someone offers you like an entry-level job at a magazine because that's where you want to work, you're then going to have to do OPT or CPT. I forget which one of the two it is, where essentially that job is not just, it's also for credit. So it counts towards your degree. So basically any job that you get that's off of campus has to explicitly relate to your degree or count towards your degree. And you're only allowed OPT for about a year. But if you want to be able to work consistently for your full 4 years, which is what I did, you have to get a job on campus mainly you can get, so they have different jobs, like in each department, they have like a student secretary basically. And then the student life side, that's where, people take care of things like housing and the diversity office, which is where I worked, and the radio stations and student government. There are a range of like positions for students, mainly secretarial positions where it's really not that much work. They're essentially paying you to sit at a desk, take phone calls, and ever so often help them with events. So it's a really great job actually to have as a student, but those are the only jobs you can have that you can keep over your 4 years.
Okay. And then in terms of your studies, what did you study and what are you planning to continue studying?
I majored in English and I minored in philosophy. And my PhD is also going to be in English. And I'm interested in the post-colonial experience as it relates to art, photography, literature. I'm interested in transcontinental Africa and Latin America. I am interested in an interdisciplinary study in English and art history, and just how those two kind of mediums of expression fully represent the post-colonial experience and what the relationship is between these two continental experiences.
Actually, no, I just remembered something. You remember when you used to be a terrible speller, and then and then we used to say that you are DJ Vilakazi in how you'd spell words.
Uh-huh.
I find it interesting how you ended up still majoring in English. Why would you do that when clearly English was not your friend here.
Right. And to be clear, I still can't spell, which is an interesting problem. But an English degree really isn't about spelling or grammar or syntax or sentence structure. That's really like linguistics. And I think, unfortunately, high school English is a bad representation. English is really about um, how do I, when you read a book, when you read a passage, how can you closely read this passage and unpack certain things, not necessarily that the author is trying to tell you, but that you're picking up from the text? What are the different ways that you can read the text, and what are the different contexts that this text can apply to? And that's really what I've truly enjoyed about English. What I love about English is that one book can be read in so many different ways and have so many different kinds of social commentary that you wouldn't see if you just read it once or on the surface. But if you really look and you dig, you'll find really rich ideas and ways of seeing things and ways of understanding things that you wouldn't have seen on a surface read.
And then in the note that you made, you wrote how the first 2 years of American college or university, you do general things where you have to experience the different fields that are possible to study. And then you said something very interesting about how you found it a bit easy to cope because of South African education. Maybe just unpack that. How come? Because we're meant to have a very terrible education here.
So actually, a South African education is very, at least at the high school level, is very, very good, much better than an American education. When I did my college algebra class, it was everything I had done in high school. Of course, there was work required because it's math, but all of it was familiar. None of it was new or different. How do you write an essay? How do you structure an essay? Other than like little things like format, it was really easy for me. So really those first 2 years, it was really easy to get by, which is why I decided to stagger my courses and take my high level mixed with my low level, because I knew my low levels were so easy. I could focus on my high level courses. And like, to give you a sense, an anthropology class, you meet 1.5 hours per class twice a week, and maybe your assignment is to write a 3-page essay every week or every second week. And that was nothing. So yes, as a South African, those first 2 years you will be fine.
And now, if you look back at how did you acclimatize to a new country? Because you were still technically a teenager when you left. So how did you make friends? How did you get used to a new space?
Um, in the friend department, I personally did struggle a lot because I'm someone who like really closely holds on to their friends. But the way that I sort of learned to live in the new place, I had to almost intellectualize everything. So like, I know that I like shopping and I like going to watch, shows at a theater. But when I got there, because I didn't have the people that I would normally do those things with, I had to very intentionally sit down and think like, okay, what do I like to do in my spare time? I like to shop. I like to go to shows. I like to see ballets. I like to watch movies. You write down the list, and then you literally open up your laptop and go, okay, theater shows in Boca Raton Theater Company, right? So for me, I had to very thoughtfully think about what I like and then come up with ways or help myself find those things that I enjoy. And then after a while, it became intuitive to sort of just get up and go shopping. Whereas when I first moved, I had to do this thing of like, okay, I know I like shopping. Let me search what are all of the malls in the area. And then I'm first going to go to this mall, then that mall, then that mall. Then I'll decide which mall that I like. And then I was able to sort of, if I want to go shopping, okay, great. I'm going to the mall, which was my mall, which was one I very systematically found. I hope that answers the question. But on the friends thing, there are much easier ways to make friends. You join things like student clubs that you're interested in. There are all kinds of clubs for, like, say, African students, or clubs for Black women, or clubs for Black people, or fraternities or sororities, or getting a job. Those are very clear and easy ways of finding friends.
And then how did you manage having to be responsible away from home? How did you manage missing home, missing your family? How did you do that?
So in terms of being responsible, there was sort of this realization that I don't have anyone who's going to like rag on me about make your bed, wash your dishes, all of the things that parents yell at you about. And so I kind of weirdly got more strict on myself, because I was worried that because I didn't have an authority telling me to do those things, I was almost like very scared of losing my way, because I think maybe my parents did a good job at scaring me and making me feel like if you don't make your bed, you'll wind up doing drugs or whatever. So I think they did a good job at that. So for a while, I very strictly kind of stuck to their rules. It was only maybe after 2 years that I was able to relax. And I mean, if you're attentive to your school and you're just making sure, honestly, you just do what they told you. Turn off the lights before you leave the house. Make your bed. Maybe wash your dishes the night before. You really will be fine. After a while, I was able to sort of trust myself and being responsible. In terms of missing my friends and my family, that was really hard for me. It was really hard for me to be okay with finding new friends. It was hard for me to let go of the friends that I had, because I loved and I cherished them so much. And so I decided to go to I think South African universities have this too, but the university caps like therapy center, and they have different support groups, and they had support groups for international students too, which was a really great space to talk about how I feel in the positions that I find myself in that people really don't understand. And so that's how I mainly was able to deal with that. And I had a fairly good support system, the family friends that I was staying with. But really, it was only after 2 years that things started becoming normal, where I felt okay with being in the US and making new friends and experiencing different things. So it took a while.
All right, cool. Any questions from the audience? Anyone? Burning question? I can't hear you, Gil. When you were at Aurora, was it IB or was it CAPS?
I think
Yeah,
IEB.
Kira.
I can run and ask my mom, but if I'm being honest,
No, it's fine. They can go Google. I told them now which high school you went to. Yeah, it was Kira Aurora. Okay, so wait. Kira Aurora, that's where she went. Yeah, but they're different. All right, wait. Let Anderson, wait. Do you have a question? Oh, so Ellie, are you planning to come back home, or are you American now?
I am not American and I will never be. I don't want to live in the US after my PhD, but I don't want to come back home just yet. My plan is to maybe move to a different part of the world and maybe live in a different part for another 10 years. And do I want to retire in South Africa? Once I've done my thing and once I'm tired of moving around, yes, I do want to come back, maybe teach part-time. I don't know, I'll figure that out. But eventually I will come back, just not in the next 20, 25 years.
Okay, any other questions? Takal, how's the food? Oh, go on, she's obsessed. All right, I guess even this class wants to know about the food. So
Sure.
just unpack how you got used to American food, etc.
Um, I had a stomach ache for the first 6 months because it was really hard for me to adjust. But after I was able to get used to it, I mostly cook because, hey guys, fast food in the US is like, it's really, nobody knows what's in there. I don't even eat McDonald's in the US anymore. I don't eat Burger King. I just don't go to those restaurants because you're asking for trouble. But there certainly are like restaurants that I eventually found that I enjoy, that won't give you a stomach ache or a runny tummy after eating red meat, that aren't super expensive. But for I cooked, and maybe the way that I sort of got into maybe a more American cuisine was through home cooking and finding recipes and cookbooks. And so there is a way to enjoy their cuisine um, after that 6 month tummy ache period.
Cool. Any other questions? Okay, one deal. Okay. So when you were starting to experience the Americans, how did they treat you? How did you feel around them?
So I think when right, they see a black person, they assume I'm black. The moment I open my mouth, I think that's when maybe the knobs started turning because I don't sound the way that they expect me to sound. And then they would assume I'm from the UK. And then when I would correct them, there was right shock that, oh my gosh, not only is she black and African, but she speaks English better than us. Right. So there were all those kinds of reactions. So are they problematic? Yes. Are they consequential? No. I felt fine for the most part. I never felt like I was in danger. I never felt like I was ostracized um, in any way. Were there things like, people assuming you work at a shop because you're black and maybe you're not dressed to the nines? Yes, stuff like that would happen. Would I walk into a slightly fancier store and I notice that the person's like really kind of eyeing me? Yes, that would happen. But I think those are things that if you're a person of color or a black person, maybe anywhere in the world, you're gonna have to. That's just something you have to deal with, whether you like it or not. Um, but yeah, other than like kind of curiosity around the Africanness, once that faded away, at least with my immediate friends and colleagues, it was great.
Cool. Any other questions? Batibuza. Mm. Okay. So then in Florida, how did Black Lives Movement work there, and how did you experience it?
I'm sorry, how did black what?
The Black Lives Movement, how did it manifest there in Florida where you stay, and how did you experience it?
So in Florida's sort of that's where your wealthy New Yorkers come and spend their summer months and they have their vacation time, and they tend to be liberals. But so Black Lives Matter, it wasn't as kind of prevalent as it is now with George Floyd. Right now, I can imagine that everyone has a Black Lives Matter sign outside of their homes. But when I was there, it was, if you ask any kind of white person what they think of Black Lives Matter, they're all probably going to say it's anti-police, it's problematic, blah, blah, blah. So do white South Floridians have a fundamental misunderstanding of the experience that people of color have? Absolutely. And part of that is because it is, Boca was a majority white place. Florida is a slightly wealthier place, which unfortunately inevitably means you are going to have more white people who are sort of more insulated in their own opinions and ideas. Maybe to give you a sense, when now Angela Davis isn't a Black Lives Matter activist, but she is associated with the Black, she's a supporter of that movement. When she came on campus, there was a lot of controversy around that. So at the time, Black Lives Matter or any kind of pro-Black activist wasn't always received with opening and welcoming arms on a campus like ours. Now, with George Floyd and everything that's happening, I certainly think that's changed. I think white Americans have been forced to see what Black Lives Matter really is about. And so I think it is changing a little bit.
Cool. Okay, last question. Okay, ask yours and you can ask yours and I'll pick it. Kala Wandi.
What kind of transport
Can make sense. Just ask your question. Yeah, that's very shame. You're starstruck. But okay, so Ellie, I think we'll ask you 2 last questions. Let's maybe ask the silly one first. Seeing that you are in Florida, have you met any celebrities?
I have not met any celebrities, but I swear I saw Ryan Gosling riding a bike. I swear I saw it.
Oh my
I
God.
swear.
Oh my word. That is like
Like,
so
it's actually
crazy.
kind of amazing. And I have seen Versace's house in Miami. It's gorgeous.
Mm. Okay, then in terms of just modes of transportation, did you live close to campus? How did you travel? How is it like there?
So unfortunately, both South Florida, Harrisonburg, which is where I was living for the past 6 months, and Durham, which I visited. Durham is probably the best in public transport, but the US in general, other than, Los Angeles, DC, and New York, public transport is just not readily or easily available. I lived very close to from the person that I was living with. He had a car, and so we split the car, and that's how I was able to say, like, drive down to Miami if I felt like it. There certainly are options like I could have taken the train from Boca down to Miami if I wanted to. So there certainly are options available, but it's not built for someone who walks, and it's not built for public transport. It's really built for someone with a car.
Okay, cool. Nandi, is that a hand or are you waving? Okay, last one because it's about to be break. So ask your question. Oh, okay. So someone wants you to describe what public transport looks like in the States. Is it a taxi? Or is it a yellow cab? Or is it mini buses? Or is it big buses? Is there the subway? And but we are comba now, or do you just stand there and wave like in the movies?
Okay, so yellow cabs that you stand and wave down, and your subways, that's in New York. In DC, you have your subway system
Geography.
and
The
your
high
busing
point is not the
system.
subway, little girl. All right, sorry, Ellie. Carry on. So yellow cab is New York. Subway is New York. So in Florida, what is it like?
In Florida, you have a train that goes. So most of the way that if you look at a map, most South Florida, like most of the living happens on the coast. And so you do have a train that goes from like West Palm right down to Miami. In Miami, you have like an Airbus system, but no real like buses that you get on and off of. On the FAU campus, they have an FAU bus, but it's not like, it's good, but it's not something you can rely on to get from, your apartment to school. It's more like, it's designed for FAU students who live on campus, who want to go to the mall or the grocery store or what have you. There are no minibuses. There aren't taxis in the same way there are taxis here. No yellow cabs in South Florida. There's Uber and Lyft. But yes, South Florida, it's mostly kind of an existing busing system, a good enough train system, and then Uber and Lyft, which isn't public transport, but you know.
Sue, okay, ask your question. What are you gonna do with your PhD? But don't be over intellectualize it, because I saw them.
Okay, well, in very basic words, I want to look at the connections between literature, photography, and art, and how those three things speak to. So when I say the post-colonial experience, what I mean is South Africa is a post-colonial country. We are a country that experienced colonialism, and now we're in a period where technically on paper, colonialism is over, but there still are certain economic structures that do maintain a colonial system. And culturally, South Africans are kind of navigating how do we marry what we have from the West and our own traditional ways of doing, being, thinking, dressing. So very kind of easy touch points is brands like, say, Khosi that create dresses that are like a mon silhouette but using traditional material. That's a really interesting example of the cultural expression of the post-colonial experience, because it's melding these two worlds that most Black South Africans find themselves in, and it's a direct expression of that experience. And so I'm interested in that kind of expression at the literary and photographic and artistic level. And how do people think about, express that, write about, and what emerges when you put those two mediums together. And yes, I'll leave it there.
Okay, cool, Ellie. Thanks a lot. Enjoy your family. Say hi to everyone. Hopefully, COVID doesn't stop you going back to America. Okay.
I hope
Oh, you want to
too.
say
Thank
bye?
You
Oh, you're such Black children. All right. There, just wave. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Arab, yes.